Why did no one notice the way her hands trembled? The weapons room was cold, its metal walls humming with the low rhythm of machinery, yet sweat glistened on Sergeant Hector Wade's shaved head. He stood before a table of rifles lined like soldiers, M4 carbines glinting beneath the harsh fluorescent lights. The sound of metal on metal echoed each time he inspected one, an almost ritualistic clatter, mechanical and final. 6 soldiers waited in line, boots straight, backs straight, faces carved from boredom and routine. It was early and everyone pretended not to feel what the mission brief had already warned. This patrol would not be ordinary. Intelligence had called it high threat. Everyone else knew what that meant. At the end of the line stood Lance Corporal Emma Reyes. She was small compared to the rest, 5'4" in her boots, light brown hair twisted into a messy bun that kept falling loose. Freckles bridged her nose, and her gray eyes carried a calm that unsettled people who mistook stillness for weakness. The others checked their gear like soldiers. She checked hers like a surgeon, methodical, quiet, deliberate. Every tourniquet, every needle, every vial in her medical pouch in its exact place. Her hands knew where everything lived. Only her fingers betrayed her. They shook, barely perceptible, when she reached for her water bottle. No one saw, or maybe no one cared to, but Wade noticed. His smile thinned into something that wasn't a smile at all. He reached for the last rifle on the table, turned it once in his thick hands, and extended it toward her. "Here you go, medic, your weapon." The words dripped amusement. Emma accepted the rifle, feeling the balance instantly too light at the front. Wrong. She pulled back the charging handle, checked the chamber. Click. Hollow. She tried again. Click, click. The pin moved but didn't strike. Something inside the weapon was dead. "Problem specialist." Wade's voice boomed across the room, drawing glances. Or did they skip weapons training at medical school? A few quiet laughs followed. Corporal Morrison smirked. Specialist Chen crossed her arms, the picture of disdain. Even Captain Brooks, standing near the map table, didn't look up. He just adjusted his jaw like a man too busy to care. Emma's eyes rose to meet Wade. For a single, crystalline second, the world narrowed to that space between them. She saw it in his stare, the deliberate act, the satisfaction of a man exacting a punishment he'd planned. Not a malfunction, a message. She held the broken rifle tighter. "No problem, Sergeant," she said softly, voice steady enough to cut through the air. He grinned and moved on. The soldiers dispersed. Boots echoed away. Emma stood there alone for one long breath, the rifle heavy and useless in her hands. Then she turned, slung it over her shoulder, and followed them out. Outside, dawn bled over the desert outpost like an open wound. The air already shimmered with heat, though the clock read barely 5:30. The base, Combat Outpost Charlie 7, was a cluster of concrete, wire, and exhaustion. The kind of place that forgot the world beyond sand and gunpowder existed. In the briefing room, the smell of burnt coffee and fear mixed under stale air. 15 soldiers gathered, some standing, some half asleep on folding chairs, all waiting for orders. Captain Brooks stood at the front, posture crisp, eyes distant. He looked like a man rehearsing leadership rather than living it. "Mission straightforward," he said, tracing a line across the map. 2 vehicles, 8-person patrol, route through Sector 7 Alpha. Objective: confirm intel on a suspected weapons cache at Grid 38 SMB 4726. Threat level moderate to high. We move in 20. No one asked why intelligence had downgraded the threat after calling it high risk. No one ever asked those questions out loud. "Rules of engagement." Wade lifted a hand, his tone all discipline and none of the venom from earlier. "Standard row," Brooks replied. "Positive identification before engaging. Medic stays in Vehicle 2. He glanced briefly, too briefly, at Emma. "We don't need complications." It wasn't what he said, it was how. Every soldier felt the shift of attention, the unspoken judgment. She was the complication, the outsider. Emma stayed silent. She learned long ago that speaking in rooms like this only painted targets on your back. She just adjusted her gear, her movements smooth, mechanical, like a machine hiding a wound. No one in that room knew why she was there, or what she'd already survived. 3 weeks earlier, she had walked into Captain Brooks's office with a report, a real one. Evidence, photos, timestamps, statements from Private Sarah Mitchell, a young woman barely 20 who had finally broken down and told Emma everything about Wade. The comments that began as jokes, the threats that followed, the night he cornered her in an empty hallway. Emma had written it all down, submitted it, waited for the system to work. It had taken less than 48 hours for that belief to die. "We've handled it internally, specialist," Brooks had said, never looking her in the eye. "Sergeant Wade has been counseled. The matter's closed." The matter was closed. Those words had burned worse than any wound. She'd saluted, said "Understood, sir," and left. Because you didn't fight the system, you survived it. And now, 3 weeks later, Wade had handed her a broken rifle. Emma stood at the back of the briefing room, the hum of the projector loud enough to drown out her heartbeat. The captain's voice blurred into background noise. Sector routes, contact procedures, chain of command. She'd heard it all before. But something else caught her attention. Lisa Chen, leaning toward Morrison, whispering with a smirk. "Give her a week," Chen said. "She won't last." Morrison nodded. "Females don't have the grip strength for sustained ops anyway. It's biology." Emma didn't flinch, but she saw the way Chen's eyes lingered too long, the guilt hiding under mockery. The same guilt Emma had seen the night before when her backup radio mysteriously drowned in a sink of water. "Accident," Chen had claimed. Emma hadn't pressed. She didn't need proof to know sabotage when she saw it. Someone was building something against her, a small war inside the larger one. Across the room, Staff Sergeant Maria Kowalski watched Emma with quiet curiosity. Older, battle-scarred, the kind of soldier who had survived enough to recognize the signs. How Emma's gaze constantly measured exits, how her stance shifted with threat angles, how she breathed in rhythm with the hum of the base generator. Not nerves, instinct. Kowalski didn't remember where she'd seen it before, only that she had. Captain Brooks finished the briefing. "Mount up in 10. Soldiers moved with practiced rhythm, grabbing gear, helmets, rifles. Emma waited until most had gone before stepping forward. "Sir," she said quietly, "my weapon's not functional. Firing pins damaged. I request a replacement." Brooks didn't even look up from his map. "Make it work or stay behind." "It can't fire, sir." "Then rely on your sidearm." "Dismissed." For one heartbeat, she stood there, jaw tight, the broken M4 dangling useless at her side. Then she nodded once and walked out. Outside, the motor pool shimmered in the morning heat. 2 Humvees idled, diesel fumes curling skyward. The sound of engines was steady, almost comforting, a reminder that machines, unlike people, did what they were built to do. The first vehicle carried Brooks, Wade, Morrison, and their comms specialist, Private Wright. The second, Emma, Sarah Mitchell on the gun mount, Tors at the wheel, 19, barely shaving, and an interpreter, Ahmed Hassan, his weary eyes scanning horizons that had killed too many good men. Sarah smiled when she saw Emma. "Thank you," she whispered, voice barely audible over the engine, "for reporting him." "You don't owe me anything," Emma replied, climbing into the rear seat. The broken rifle rested across her lap like a cruel joke. "They say you got transferred here because you messed up," Sarah added, hesitant. "That you couldn't handle where you were before. I don't believe them." Emma gave the faintest smile. "Smart girl." "Second vehicle, maintain spacing," Wade's voice barked over the radio. "And try not to drive like civilians." Sarah's hands tightened on the gun mount. Emma noticed the tension, the small tremor. Trauma never really left the body. It just waited under the skin. Tors shifted nervously. Left rear tire looked a little soft earlier, corporal, maybe 8 side down. Before Emma could reply, Wade's voice snapped through comms. Radio discipline, private. I don't need a running commentary. Tor's flushed red, eyes down. Emma leaned forward. Good catch. Keep your eyes sharp, private. Small details save lives. Minutes later, the lead vehicle's rear tire exploded. The sound was like a gunshot in an empty cathedral, sudden, deafening, final. The Humvee jerked sideways, dust billowing in a thick cloud. Brooks fought the wheel, Wade cursed. Metal screamed against asphalt until the convoy ground to a halt. Perfect, Morrison muttered, climbing out. We're sitting ducks. Emma stayed in her seat, scanning the terrain. The desert stretched forever, flat and empty, but not dead. There was movement in the shimmer of heat, the subtle shift of air around broken buildings, the kind of silence that wasn't absence but anticipation. She cataloged it all: the ridge at 400 meters east, ideal sniper line; the collapsed aqueduct 300 north, big enough to hide a squad; the narrow pass ahead, boxed between canal and wall. Textbook ambush geometry. Kowalski dismounted, providing cover, her eyes again on Emma. She noticed the small, unconscious motions, the way Emma's fingers adjusted invisible turrets on her scopeless rifle, the way she tracked distances with her gaze. You've done this before, Kowalski murmured. Done what, Staff Sergeant? Whatever it is you're trying not to do. Their eyes met. Emma almost answered, but some truths had weight heavier than armor. Just staying alert, she said finally. Kowalski nodded. Keep it up. Something about today feels wrong. It did. The heat shimmered harder, the wind fell dead still. No birds, no distant engines. Even the desert seemed to hold its breath. After 14 minutes, the tire was replaced. They rolled forward again, the road narrowing into a funnel of broken walls and silent windows. Emma's stomach turned cold. Every instinct screamed, don't go in there. Recommend alternate route, she said, voice calm but firm. Negative, Brooks replied. We're behind schedule. Sir, this is textbook kill. Wade cut her off, tone dripping with mockery. We'll let the medics stick to medical work, thanks. Actual soldiers can handle security. The channel went silent. Emma said nothing more. You can't save people who have decided not to listen. She checked her pistol, 15 rounds, one in the chamber, a child's toy against whatever waited ahead. Tor's hands clenched the wheel. Sarah's breath came faster. Hassan muttered a prayer in Arabic. Emma exhaled once, slow. The lead vehicle entered the choke point. For a heartbeat, nothing. Then the world split open. A roar of pressure and dust, the air punching itself apart. The RPG streaked from the roofline, a flash of smoke and terror. It hit the Humvee's front wheel assembly. The explosion wasn't cinematic, it was brutal and focused. Metal screamed. The vehicle rolled sideways into the canal wall, flipping once before slamming onto its side. Gunfire erupted immediately. AK-47s from rooftops, from windows, from the rubble south. Bullets sliced air and bit steel. Tor slammed the brakes, the second Humvee jerking to a stop 20 meters back. Sarah froze, hands white on the mount. Emma didn't. Down, she shouted, grabbing the younger woman and dragging her behind cover. Rounds snapped inches above them, punching holes into armor. Hassan rolled out, low and fast, already scanning arcs. Tors sat frozen at the wheel, eyes wide. Tors, Emma's voice cut like a blade. Return fire now. Something broke loose inside him. He grabbed his rifle, firing through the gun port, not accurate but enough to send fear back toward the shooters. The ambush had begun. The first life-and-death minutes had arrived. And Emma Reyes, medic, scapegoat, ghost of forgotten wars, was about to remind the desert that broken weapons and broken people could still fight back. How do you stay calm when the world is tearing itself apart? The first seconds of the ambush existed outside of time. Every sound merged into one: the scream of bullets, the crack of impact, the ragged breathing of soldiers who hadn't yet realized they were still alive. Emma moved before thought could catch up. Training, or something older, took over. She pulled Tors from the driver's seat, his hands still gripping the wheel as if he could stop the world from spinning. "Get down," she shouted, shoving him behind the axle as another burst of fire chewed into the hood. The round sparked off armor with a metallic scream that clawed at nerves and reason alike. The lead vehicle burned 20 meters ahead. Flames licked out from under the twisted doorframe, black smoke pouring upward into the blinding sky. Brooks and Wade were silhouettes inside that wreck, Morrison dragging someone clear by the straps of their plate carrier. "Captain's hit," someone yelled, though Emma couldn't see who. The dust, heat, and chaos folded into one shifting haze. She forced her breathing steady, counting seconds, counting patterns. The gunfire wasn't random. It came from 3 directions: east roofline, north rubble, south wall. Classic L-shaped ambush. She could hear it in the rhythm. One heavy gun, PKM, 7.62 caliber, steady rate of fire. Trained shooters, not amateurs. Her mind mapped geometry even as she crawled through dust. Angles, distances, cover points. It was instinct she wasn't supposed to have anymore. Sarah crouched beside her, trembling, still clutching her weapon like it might disappear. "They're closing in." Emma grabbed the younger woman's hand, forced her to look up. "Not yet. Listen to me. Stay low, stay alive." Then she was moving again, toward Morrison's voice, toward the chaos. Bullets traced the air above her, each one whispering what could have been. Brooks was half out of the overturned Humvee, blood streaking his forehead. Wade crouched beside him, firing short bursts into nothing. His aim was wide, frantic, all noise and panic. Emma slid into cover beside them. "Captain, talk to me." Brooks gritted his teeth. Arms hit not bad, Morrison's worse, leg wound. "Can you move?" He nodded barely. She turned to Morrison, blood soaking through his pant leg, the crimson spreading fast. "Stay with me," she murmured, tearing open her kit. Her hands worked with surgical precision even as explosions thundered around them. Tourniquet high, twist, lock, check pulse, pressure bandage, inject morphine. "You're not dying here," she said softly, almost to herself. Wade turned on her suddenly, grabbing her shoulder. "This is your fault." His face was wild, eyes dilated, lips trembling. "You distracted us. You made us stop." Emma's expression didn't change, calm under fury. "Let go, Sergeant. You can't even fire your weapon, and you." Brooks pulled him back, voice sharp. "Enough. Get your head straight or get out of my sight." But Wade wasn't listening. He stumbled away, still cursing, still shaking. Emma's gaze followed him only for a second. Then she refocused. Morrison's breathing had stabilized for now. Across the field, the machine gun on the roof opened up again. Concrete chipped away above her head. She looked at her broken rifle, mocking her, useless. Then her mind started moving faster than fear. She crawled to Morrison's ruined rifle, grabbed it, and began disassembling both weapons. Her movements were deliberate, mechanical, impossibly calm. Stock separated, bolt carrier pulled, receiver stripped. The parts scattered across the dust like puzzle pieces. "Ma'am," Tors called from cover, voice trembling. "What are you doing?" "Fixing a problem." "You can't under fire, you can't just—" Her hands didn't stop. "Watch me." She stripped wire from a damaged radio antenna, pulled a spring from Morrison's firing assembly, taped fragments together with medical tape, improvised a firing pin using a segment of a cleaning rod. The PKM roared again, hammering the wreckage. A round tore past her shoulder close enough to burn. She didn't flinch. Kowalski slid beside her, laying down cover fire. "What the hell are you doing?" Emma didn't look up. "Making it work." "You can't fix that thing." "I'm not fixing it," Emma interrupted. "I'm rebuilding it." 8 minutes. That's all it took. 8 minutes to turn 2 dead rifles into one weapon that shouldn't exist. A single-shot, hand-cycled beast built from scraps, tape, and precision born of desperation. When she chambered a round and pulled the bolt back, it clicked with a sound that was clean, sharp, alive. Morrison stared, blood drying on his leg. "That's not possible." Emma didn't answer. She just looked through the cracked sight and waited. The enemy began advancing, 3 figures sprinting low through the heat shimmer. They moved with confidence, expecting chaos, expecting broken resistance. Emma's breathing slowed. The world fell silent. Wind direction, heat distortion, mirage drift, she measured it all in half a second. She squeezed the trigger. The rifle cracked, sharp and surgical. The lead fighter dropped instantly, his body collapsing mid-step. The second man froze, turned, and fell before he could aim. The third scrambled for cover, yelling something in Arabic Emma didn't catch. Kowalski exhaled, disbelief and awe tangled in her voice. "Holy, how did you?" Emma worked the bolt with steady rhythm, one shot at a time. For the first time, Brooks looked at her like he was seeing her. Not the medic, not the outsider, something else, someone else. The radio crackled. "Charlie 7, this is TOC, quick reaction force delayed. Repeat, QRF delayed, sit tight." "Delayed," Brooks barked. "How long?" 40 minutes minimum." 40 minutes. In a firefight, that was eternity. Emma's voice was low but steady. "We won't last 40. Wade crawled closer, his face twisted in panic. "We need to fall back." "To where?" Brooks demanded. "We're boxed in." Emma pointed toward the canal, toward a half-collapsed building 50 meters north. "That structure has elevation and sightlines. If we can reach it, we control the field." Wade glared. "You want us to move through open ground? Are you insane?" She looked him dead in the eye. "No, just not interested in dying where you want me to." Brooks hesitated, torn between protocol and instinct. He looked at her, the calm in her eyes, the certainty in her voice. "You're sure?" Emma didn't blink. "Yes, sir." He made his decision. "We move on your call." Something changed in that moment. Command shifted, not by order but by trust. The medic was now the center of gravity. Emma crawled forward, signaling with quick hand gestures. Kowalski and Morrison covered the move. Torres and Sarah followed. Hassan moved last, whispering a prayer as he ran. They reached the culvert just as another burst of gunfire tore up the dirt behind them. The roar of bullets chased them inside, echoing off concrete like thunder trapped underground. "Keep moving," Emma ordered. They emerged inside the building, panting, bleeding but alive. The second floor had half collapsed, leaving just enough space for firing positions. Emma pointed. "Morrison north window, Sarah rooftop hole, use that machine gun mount, Hassan rear flank, Torres ammo resupply." Each command landed with precision. Each soldier obeyed. Brooks crouched beside her. "You've done this before," he said quietly. She kept her eyes on the window, once or twice. The enemy regrouped, pushing toward their new position. But now the advantage was gone. Emma's fields of fire cut perfect cross angles, overlapping arcs of death. Morrison suppressed the roof team. Sarah's bursts pinned their flank. Emma's single-shot weapon cracked again, measured, deliberate. One shot, one drop. Another, then another. Each trigger pull felt like a heartbeat. Slow, controlled, inevitable. Wade fired from behind cover, missing wide, screaming curses between shots. The man who had once laughed now trembled every time his rifle kicked. "Why aren't they falling back?" Torres shouted. "Because they think we're still the same people they ambushed," Emma replied softly. "They'll learn." A stray round hit the wall near her, spraying concrete dust across her cheek. She blinked once, wiped it away, and adjusted her sight. Brooks finally spoke, his voice rough. "Who trained you?" Emma didn't answer, not yet. The firefight stretched on, a rhythm of violence and silence. In between bursts, Emma could hear her own heartbeat, steady as a drum. She felt alive in a way that scared her. Hassan glanced at her between reloads. You fight like ghosts I heard stories about. In Ramadi, they spoke of a woman like you. Emma's eyes flickered, something unreadable crossing her face. Stories are just stories. But he saw it, the flicker of memory, the flash of pain. The machine gun on the roof went silent. Morrison leaned back, sweat pouring down his face. Reloading. Take 5, Emma ordered. You did good. The desert wind howled through broken windows. Smoke rose from the burning lead Humvee, painting the horizon black. The air stank of cordite, diesel, and blood. Inside that ruined building, 8 people clung to life, held together by a medic who wasn't supposed to lead. Kowalski crouched beside her, reloading calmly. You know, she said, you remind me of someone. Emma's gaze stayed on the horizon. Who? Back in 2018, Ramadi. There was talk of a force recon team ambushed, 7 dead, 1 survivor. They called her Phantom. Emma's jaw tightened, the faintest tremor in her voice. Those are just rumors. Kowalski studied her profile. Yeah, she said softly, maybe. Outside, the battlefield went still, too still, the kind of silence that carried weight. Brooks listened. They're regrouping. Emma nodded. Then we're ready. She took a breath, steadying herself. Her reflection shimmered faintly in the cracked glass, dust-streaked, blood-smeared eyes calm. Not rage, not fear, just purpose. She looked like someone who had done this too many times to count. Someone who had died once and kept walking anyway. In the silence that followed, the faintest voice from her memory whispered 7 names. 7 faces that would never leave her. She whispered back, I still carry you. Outside, the enemy shifted again, shadows moving across rooftops. The next wave was coming. And this time, Emma Reyes, armed with a rifle born of broken parts and sheer will, wasn't just fighting for survival. She was fighting to remind the world what happens when you underestimate the wrong woman. Why do some secrets wait until the bullets stop to be heard? The air hung thick, alive with dust and the faint metallic taste of spent rounds. Every heartbeat echoed louder than the gunfire had moments ago. Outside the broken windows, the horizon glowed faintly red where the sun bled into desert haze. But inside the building, light felt colder, fractured by smoke and disbelief. Emma crouched near the half-shattered wall, her improvised rifle resting across her knees. She could still feel the weapon's pulse, faint, almost human, as if the metal remembered what it had just done. Across the room, Morrison reloaded, his hands shaking less now. Confidence had returned, but it was fragile, brittle like glass under tension. Kowalski scanned the east flank, her rifle steady, her eyes sharper than any scope. Torres pressed a blood-soaked rag to his shoulder where shrapnel had grazed him. Sarah sat against a wall, chest heaving, eyes wide and glassy, trapped between relief and shock. Outside, the gunfire had stopped, but quiet didn't mean safety. Quiet meant waiting, both sides breathing, thinking, planning the next move. Brooks crouched beside Emma, his voice low, his face pale under a mask of grime. They'll come again. They always do, she murmured, eyes on the window. He studied her for a moment. You sound like someone who's seen this before. Emma didn't respond. She was listening to the wind, to the faint scrape of boots across rubble, to memories that hadn't stopped screaming for years. Wade shifted near the door, his rifle drooping. He was sweating hard now, jaw tight, mouth half open. This is a nightmare, he muttered. We're outnumbered, outgunned. They'll flank us next. You've killed us all with this stupid move. Emma turned slightly. Her voice stayed calm, the same tone one might use to diagnose a wound. You can leave if you want, Sergeant. He froze, she meant it, and something about that terrified him. Brooks snapped, that's enough, both of you. But Wade's eyes didn't leave hers. What he saw in them wasn't anger, it was control. The kind of quiet authority that didn't ask for permission. It was the kind of gaze that reminded him of combat leaders he'd never measure up to. He looked away first. Emma returned to scanning the horizon, using a broken shard of glass as a makeshift mirror to watch the north sector. Through the reflection, she caught movement, shadows repositioning behind a crumbled wall. 3 hostiles 200 meters northwest, she whispered. Brooks followed her line of sight, saw nothing. You sure? Positive. How? She hesitated, not from doubt, from memory. Wind patterns, she said finally. The dust shifts differently where people move. Brooks frowned. That wasn't something medics said. That was something recon specialists said. The radio crackled suddenly, making everyone flinch. Charlie 7, this is TOC, Sitrep. Brooks grabbed the mic. Still engaged, multiple hostiles in vicinity, casualties stable, holding defensive position. A pause, then the voice of Lieutenant Gray. Acknowledged, QRF is still 35 minutes out. Reinforcements inbound from Al-Hadar, ETA unknown. Hold your ground. Hold your ground. Easy words from safe places. Emma tuned out the voice. She could already hear the faint rumble of something new, heavier boots moving through the sand. The enemy was regrouping, not retreating. Captain, she said, they're coming again. How do you know? Because I would. He looked at her, searching for something that wasn't there, fear, hesitation, uncertainty. He found none. The next wave hit hard. Automatic fire shattered the silence, raking the upper floor. The wall exploded inches from Morrison's shoulder. He cursed, dropped flat. Kowalski returned fire in measured bursts, her discipline cutting through panic like a scalpel. South side, Sarah shouted, her machine gun spitting fire from the rooftop gap. They're trying to flank. Emma leaned out the window, sighted down the cracked iron sight. Her breathing slowed, her world narrowing to a single heartbeat, a single trigger pull. She fired. The bullet crossed space with surgical precision, catching the lead fighter mid-step. The second one ducked, too late. The third fled behind cover. The rifle clacked as she cycled the bolt again, smooth, fast, relentless. Kowalski turned to look at her, half disbelief, half recognition. You're not a medic, she said. Emma didn't answer. Another burst from the PKM tore through the upper corner of the building, showering them in concrete dust. A shard sliced her forearm open, thin and deep. Blood welled instantly. She ignored it. Wade, Brooks shouted, suppress that machine gun. But Wade just stared, paralyzed. His rifle hung limply in his hands. Emma didn't waste time. She snatched his spare magazine, slapped it into her improvised rifle, and leaned into the window. One breath, one shot. The PKM's barrel flashed and went silent. The rooftop enemy crumpled backward, weapon sliding off the edge. Brooks blinked, then looked at her like he was seeing a ghost. That's 200 meters through concrete glare. 210, she corrected absently. How do you even? Years of practice. Wade's voice cracked. That's impossible. Kowalski's whisper was almost reverent, not for Phantom. The word hung in the air like a detonation. Morrison looked up. What did you just say? Kowalski swallowed, eyes locked on Emma. Phantom, Force Recon, Ramadi 2018. They said she held an entire block alone for 6 hours, 47 confirmed kills. Every Marine in theater knew the story. Emma froze. For a second she wasn't in this building. She was back there in the ruins of Ramadi. The heat, the smell, the bodies. 7 names carved into her soul. Brooks stared at her, realization dawning like sunrise. That's you. Does it matter? Her voice was low, rough. Yes, it matters, he said. We've been following your lead this whole time without knowing who you are. Emma's green eyes lifted slowly to meet his. Maybe knowing would have changed how you listened. He had no answer. Sarah looked between them, confusion and awe mingling in her voice. You mean she's Kowalski nodded. She's the one they called Phantom. The room went silent again, but not from fear, from recognition, from shame. Wade's face drained of color. No, no, that's not possible, you're lying. But even he didn't believe himself. His eyes darted to the rifle, the broken, reassembled weapon that shouldn't have fired, then back to her. The truth stood in front of him, breathing, steady, alive. Emma didn't look triumphant. She just looked tired. The radio crackled again. Charlie 7, this is TOC. Confirm the name Emma Reyes. Brooks hesitated, then keyed the mic. Confirmed. Staff Sergeant Emma Reyes, Force Recon 2nd Battalion 5th Marines, Ramadi survivor. A long silence followed. Then the voice on the other end softened. Copy that. We're honored to bring her home. The words hit like shrapnel. Home. She didn't even know what that meant anymore. Wade sank to his knees, the rifle slipping from his hands. He stared at the floor, his voice shaking. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. Emma looked at him. The man who'd sabotaged her weapon, mocked her, endangered everyone. There was no hatred in her eyes, just a quiet truth that landed harder than rage ever could. You didn't need to know, she said. You just needed to be better. He couldn't look at her after that. Outside, the shooting had stopped again. The remaining fighters were gone or waiting. The desert stretched silent, the wind carrying faint echoes of battle and something heavier beneath it, respect. Brooks approached her quietly. You should have told me. She shook her head. Would it have mattered? You already decided what I was the first day you saw me. His shoulders slumped. You're right. You believed the wrong people, she said simply, and it almost killed us. He nodded, eyes dark with guilt. Then tell me how to fix it. Her gaze softened slightly. You don't fix it, you learn from it, and you make sure the next one doesn't pay for it. Outside, engines rumbled in the distance, low, steady, approaching. The QRF, reinforcements. Morrison exhaled, shoulders sagging with exhaustion. Finally. Emma kept her rifle aimed toward the horizon. Don't relax yet. Kowalski looked at her. You think they'll try again? Emma nodded slowly. People don't always know when they've lost. Some need to be reminded. They waited, breath by breath, until the first armored silhouettes appeared through the dust, 4 MRAPs, their heavy frames rolling like giants across the desert. As they drew closer, the Marines dismounted in a coordinated wave, establishing a perimeter with practiced efficiency. Their commander approached, scanning the survivors with trained eyes. Where Phantom? He asked. Emma stood. Dust fell from her uniform, blood drying on her sleeve. The sunlight hit her face, outlining the Force Recon tattoo on her shoulder, the trident and eagle, black against pale skin. I'm here, she said. The captain stopped, squared himself, and saluted. Honored to serve with you, Staff Sergeant. 30 Marines followed suit. The salute rippled like wind through wheat, a soundless gesture that carried weight words couldn't. Emma returned it, crisp, exact, the motion of someone who never forgot what respect meant, even when denied it. Around her the others stood still, Tors bleeding, Sarah trembling, Brooks silent, Wade staring at the ground. They all understood something they hadn't before. Leadership wasn't rank. It was gravity. When the QRF loaded the wounded, Emma walked beside the stretchers, helping lift them one by one. She refused rest. She refused relief. Brooks caught up to her. You saved all of us. She looked at him, eyes steady. I just did my job. He shook his head. No, you did more than that. Then maybe next time, she said quietly. Believe people the first time they say something's broken before they have to prove it with blood. The words landed heavy, not cruel but true. The engines roared to life. The convoy began rolling back toward Charlie 7, the desert wind sweeping away the last traces of smoke. Inside the lead MRAP, Emma sat by the window, the broken rifle resting across her knees, repaired, scarred, functional. Outside, the horizon shimmered with heat, hiding its next secrets. But inside her chest, something had shifted. The rage had burned out. In its place was something quieter, sadder. She had spent 2 years trying to disappear. But war had a way of finding ghosts, especially the ones still owed answers. She looked down at her arm, where dust clung to dried blood and the tattoo beneath it. Below the trident, 7 names were etched into her skin, her lost team, her reason for silence. One by one, she whispered them under her breath, barely audible above the engine hum. Ramirez Johnson, Webb Martinez, Kim Okonkwo Patterson. Her voice trembled, but her eyes stayed dry. "They didn't die so I could hide," she whispered. "They died so I could keep fighting." The desert rolled past the window like time itself, and somewhere inside her, the medic, the warrior, and the survivor finally breathed the same air again. Because Emma Reyes was done running from who she was. And the world, the same one that had mocked her, doubted her, sabotaged her, was about to learn what that really meant. What happens when survival itself becomes a kind of guilt? The convoy roared across the desert, engines growling low like beasts that knew the scent of death. The dust hung behind them, swallowing the battlefield whole until it looked as if nothing had ever happened there. Inside the armored truck, the air was thick with silence. Soldiers sat shoulder to shoulder, their faces gray with exhaustion and disbelief. They had lived through something few could name and fewer would believe. Emma sat near the rear hatch, helmet resting on her knee, eyes half closed. The broken rifle lay across her lap, its metal scarred, blackened, alive. The vibration of the engine hummed through her boots, steady and cold. Across from her, Captain Brooks stared straight ahead. He hadn't spoken since the extraction. He kept replaying every second, every order, every choice. The weight of it pressed on him like armor he couldn't remove. Beside him, Sarah's hands trembled as she held a canteen. Morrison slept, drugged and pale, his leg bandaged tight. Torres leaned his head against the metal wall, whispering a prayer in Spanish that none of them understood but all of them felt. And Wade sat furthest from her, silent, hollow, drowning in his own reflection. The radio crackled again. "Charlie 7 TOC, ETA to base, 15 minutes. Command requests immediate debrief upon arrival." Brooks acknowledged quietly, "Copy that." No one else spoke. The base appeared on the horizon like a mirage, rows of concrete barriers, radar masts, and flags snapping in the wind. The convoy slowed as they passed through the gate. Marines on watch saluted. Others stared, whispering as they caught sight of her. Phantom, the ghost, had come home. When the doors opened, sunlight flooded in. The base smelled of oil and sand, the living scent of a war that never really stopped. Emma stepped out first, boots hitting gravel with deliberate weight. The officers were waiting. Lieutenant Gray stood with 2 MPs, his uniform immaculate, his expression unreadable. He saluted sharply, then gestured toward the command tent. "Captain Brooks, Staff Sergeant Reyes, inside." Brooks gave a small nod. Emma said nothing. Inside the tent, the air was cooler but heavier. A dozen faces turned as they entered: intelligence officers, medical staff, command personnel. A laptop screen glowed at the far end, showing a remote connection to higher command. Gray folded his hands. "We received your field report, Captain. You sustained an ambush, multiple casualties, and were rescued under your own defensive maneuver." Brooks nodded. "Yes, sir. The ambush was coordinated, at least 12 hostiles. We believe it was premeditated." Gray's gaze shifted to Emma. "And the report states your medic, Staff Sergeant Reyes, assumed tactical control." Brooks hesitated, then said it anyway. "Yes, sir, she did, and she saved us all." Gray raised an eyebrow. "With a broken weapon." Emma finally spoke. Her voice was low, even. 2 broken weapons combined. That drew a murmur from the officers around the table. Someone whispered, "That's impossible." Emma looked up, meeting their eyes one by one. "So is surviving Ramadi," she said softly. The silence that followed was thick enough to choke on. The man on the laptop, a colonel, leaned forward. "Ray's Force Recon correct?" "Yes, sir. Discharged 3 years ago under Section 817. Psychological fatigue, trauma-related reassignment." "Yes, sir." "Then what the hell were you doing embedded with a line unit?" Emma didn't flinch, "Serving where I was sent." The colonel studied her, then spoke carefully. "We've reviewed the incident in Ramadi. Officially, your unit was declared KIA after an IED destroyed your position. But your name appeared on an unsent transmission, time-stamped hours later. A message from someone identifying herself as Phantom." He paused, letting the word hang. Brooks glanced at her, startled. "What message?" Emma said nothing. The colonel continued. "It was short, 17 words." He read from the file. "7 down, still breathing, requesting evac, will hold as long as it takes." That message never transmitted. Gray interjected. "Intel later found the transmitter destroyed. No signal ever reached command." Emma's jaw tightened. "Then you know why I stopped sending messages." The colonel's expression softened slightly. "You were alone for 6 hours surrounded by hostiles. You fought until QRF found nothing but wreckage." "I fought until there was no one left to fight for," she said. Her voice broke at the edges, not from weakness, from remembering. Brooks turned toward her. "Why didn't you tell us?" "Because," she said quietly, "you all already had a story in your heads. I didn't need to add mine." The colonel exhaled slowly. "You're not wrong, Staff Sergeant, but we have a problem. Someone filed a falsified report under your name 2 years ago, stating you refused orders and abandoned your team during Ramadi." Brooks froze. "What?" Emma didn't move. Only her eyes hardened like glass cooling after fire. "Who?" "We don't know yet, but whoever did it ensured you'd never wear the uniform again." Gray leaned forward. "And now somehow you end up reassigned to a non-combat medic role, your record scrubbed, your past erased. Convenient, isn't it?" Emma's hand curled into a fist. "Someone wanted me buried." The colonel's tone darkened. "The question is why?" The tent went silent again. The only sound was the wind rasping through the canvas, carrying the faint cry of a distant helicopter. Brooks finally spoke. "Sir, with all respect, she's not the problem here. She's the reason any of us are alive." Gray nodded once. "No one's disputing that, Captain, but command needs clarity. If someone falsified an after-action report, we're dealing with more than a clerical error. We're dealing with a cover-up." Emma looked up. "Ramadi was classified Blackwatch territory, wasn't it?" The colonel's eyes flickered just for a moment. "That's above your clearance, Staff Sergeant." Her voice turned quiet. "That's not a denial." The officers exchanged glances. Gray cleared his throat. "You'll remain on base until further notice. Medical and psych evaluations pending. That's an order." Emma didn't argue. She just saluted, precise and sharp. "Understood." When they stepped outside, the light hit her face again, harsh, merciless. Brooks followed, his expression a knot of guilt and questions. "Emma," he said softly, "what's Blackwatch?" She didn't answer. Her eyes stayed on the horizon, where heat shimmered like memory. "Please," he said, "I deserve to know." She turned slowly, her gaze steady but distant. Blackwatch was a ghost story, a special operations program that didn't exist until it did. They used people like me, disposable assets for missions too dirty for flags. Brooks' throat tightened. "You were part of that." She nodded once. "We all were, my team, every one of them who died." He stared at her, realization dawning. "And someone blamed you to bury the mission." "That's what ghosts are for," she said quietly, "to carry the sins of the living." He wanted to say something, to tell her she was wrong, but deep down he knew she was. That night the base was quieter than usual. The desert cooled, the stars came out sharp, endless, unforgiving. Emma sat alone outside the barracks, the repaired rifle beside her. Her hands were still stained with blood that wasn't hers. She stared at them for a long time, as if trying to remember what clean used to feel like. A shadow moved nearby. Kowalski approached, holding 2 cups of black coffee. "You looked like you needed one," she said, sitting down beside her. Emma accepted the cup without looking up. "Thanks." They sat in silence for a long time, the kind of silence that only soldiers understand, one filled with ghosts and gratitude and the unspoken weight of survival. Kowalski finally said, "You know they're going to come after you for this." "I know. They'll try to make you disappear again." Emma took a sip, eyes still on the horizon. "Then I'll make enough noise they can't." Kowalski smiled faintly. "You really are Phantom." Emma shook her head. "Phantom died in Ramadi." Kowalski looked at her, voice soft but firm. "Then maybe it's time she came back." A faint breeze lifted the dust around them. Somewhere, far beyond the wire, the desert whispered like it remembered her name. Inside the command tent, Gray watched her through the flap. He didn't notice the man beside him, a figure in a black uniform with no insignia, hands clasped behind his back. "Is she the one?" the man asked quietly. Gray hesitated. "Yes, she's the survivor." The man nodded once. "Then we have a problem." Gray frowned. "Who exactly are you?" The man smiled faintly, the kind of smile that didn't reach the eyes. "You can call me Director Cole. I represent interests above command, Blackwatch interests." Gray's jaw tightened. "I thought Blackwatch was shut down." Cole's smile widened. "You don't shut down a shadow, Lieutenant. You just stop seeing where it falls." He turned his gaze toward Emma, sitting in the moonlight with her rifle beside her, calm and alone. "Phantom wasn't supposed to survive," he said quietly. "And now that she has, people will start asking the wrong questions." Gray swallowed. "What do you want me to do?" Cole's eyes gleamed. "Nothing yet. Let her rest. Let her believe she's safe. Then when she remembers too much, we'll remind her what silence costs." Outside, the desert wind howled again, carrying a faint, distant echo, something between a warning and a promise. And Emma Reyes, staring into that vast emptiness, felt it. Not fear, not dread. Just the familiar weight of knowing she was still being hunted. Because some battles don't end when the shooting stops. Some just change their shape. What does freedom mean when every shadow has ears? The desert slept uneasily that night. The kind of silence that wasn't peace, just the pause before something decided to move again. Emma didn't sleep. She hadn't in days. The cot in the med tent creaked beneath her as she sat on its edge, boots planted, rifle leaned close like a kept promise. The glow of the lamp threw half her face in light, half in darkness, a fitting symmetry. Outside, the wind carried whispers of static and distant laughter from the barracks. Somewhere, a generator coughed to life, breaking the stillness. She stared at her hands, the same ones that had stitched wounds, cleaned blood, and built a weapon from nothing. They still shook faintly. The body remembered even when the mind refused to. She thought of her old team again. 7 names burned into her arm, 7 memories that refused to rest. She could see them, Ramirez's grin, Kim's steady aim, Patterson's bad jokes that somehow made the waiting bearable. All gone. A knock came softly at the tent flap. "Yeah," she said, voice low. Captain Brooks stepped inside. He looked worse than before, hair matted, uniform still streaked with sand. In his eyes sat the same guilt that refused to leave. "You should be asleep," she murmured. "I could say the same to you." She gave a small, tired smile. "Fair." He looked around, making sure they were alone. "They're questioning everyone. Intel, medics, drivers. Command wants to know why that ambush happened. Someone thinks it wasn't random." Emma met his gaze. "It was." Brooks frowned. You sure? She leaned forward, voice barely above a whisper. Our convoy route was classified, Captain. Not even the local allies had clearance. The ambush site was set up days before. Trenches, elevation points, machine gun nests. That's not chance. That's planning. He sank onto the edge of a supply crate. You're saying someone leaked our route? She nodded, or wanted us there. He rubbed his temples. God, you think it's connected to Ramadi? Emma looked down. I don't think I know. The tent filled with silence again. A heavy, suffocating silence. Brooks spoke carefully. Then who's behind it? Her reply was immediate. Blackwatch. He flinched at the word, as if saying it out loud might make it real. You really believe they're still active? She glanced toward the tent flap as if expecting someone to be listening. Not active, buried, rebranded. Call it something else now, but the faces don't change. They erased us, Captain, and now they're tying off loose ends. He swallowed. You think you're one of those ends? She didn't answer because they both already knew. Brooks leaned forward, elbows on knees. If what you're saying is true, we can't fight it alone. We need proof, something solid. Emma's lips tightened. Proof got people killed last time. He looked at her, searching. Then why are you still here? Her voice softened. Because I'm tired of running from ghosts. For a moment he said nothing. Then quietly, you're not alone this time. She almost smiled, but the sound outside cut her off. Footsteps, heavy, purposeful. She grabbed her rifle instinctively. We're not alone now either. The flap opened and Lieutenant Gray stepped in. His expression was calm, but his eyes weren't. Captain, Staff Sergeant, command needs you both in the operations trailer. Brooks stood. Now. Gray nodded. Now. They followed him out into the night. The base was dimly lit, red tactical lights casting long shadows across the gravel. A sandstorm gathered on the horizon, its low growl rolling like thunder. When they reached the trailer, Emma immediately noticed something off. 2 guards at the door. Not Marines, contractors. No insignia. Their weapons had the wrong balance, too clean for men who actually fought. Inside, the room smelled of coffee and tension. 3 officers sat around a table, and beside them that same man in the black uniform, Director Cole. He smiled thinly. Staff Sergeant Reyes, Captain Brooks, please sit. Emma didn't. You're not military. Cole tilted his head. No, I'm oversight. Brooks frowned. Oversight of what? Cole's smile widened slightly. Of things best left forgotten. Gray shifted uncomfortably beside him. We're just clarifying mission reports, sir. Cole ignored him. His eyes stayed on Emma, sharp, dissecting. Tell me, Staff Sergeant, do you often take command of entire units? Only when no one else does. He chuckled, modesty charming. Her voice hardened. You sent that ambush. Brooks stiffened beside her. Emma. But Cole only smiled deeper. Interesting accusation, dangerous too. She stepped closer, unflinching. 12 insurgents with NATO training patterns. PKM emplacements positioned at textbook intercept range. That's not random militia work. That's orchestration. Cole's eyes gleamed. You think highly of my department. I think you're afraid of what I remember. For the first time his smile faltered, only slightly. And what exactly do you remember? Emma stared straight through him. Enough to know Blackwatch left bodies where they didn't belong, and someone made me carry the blame. Gray shifted again, uneasy. Sir, maybe we should. Cole raised a hand. No, let her speak. Emma's voice dropped low. You used us, my team, disposable assets for missions that never happened. When it went wrong, you scrubbed our names. Then you buried me alive in a fake discharge file. Cole leaned back, hands clasped. And yet here you are, still breathing, still making noise. Her jaw tightened. Maybe that's your mistake. He smiled again, but now it was different, colder. The problem with ghosts, Sergeant, is that they forget who holds the light. He nodded once to the guards. Take her to holding for evaluation. Brooks stepped forward immediately. You can't, she hasn't done anything wrong. Cole's tone didn't rise. Captain, you will stand down, that's an order. Gray looked away. He didn't like it, but he didn't stop it either. The guards approached. Emma didn't resist. Her hands went behind her head, calm, deliberate. As they led her out, she passed Brooks. Their eyes met for half a second. No words, just understanding. He mouthed, I'll fix this. She nodded once, I know. The door shut behind her with a sound like finality. They took her to a metal container behind the med bay, makeshift holding quarters. No windows, one chair, one cot, one faint light overhead that buzzed like an insect. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. The desert had no clocks. Emma sat in the corner, legs drawn up, eyes open. She wasn't afraid, just calculating. Every breath, every noise, every vibration through the steel floor. She'd been in worse cages. She thought of Cole's words, ghosts forget who holds the light. She smiled faintly. Then maybe it's time the light changed hands. Somewhere outside, the sandstorm broke, wind howling against the metal walls like an ancient thing set free. Then a noise, soft, a whisper of static. She turned her head. The intercom light flickered. Someone was patching through. Emma, a voice whispered, faint, distorted, female. Emma froze. Who is this? Don't speak loud, they're monitoring. Her heart skipped. She knew that voice. It couldn't be. Kim, she whispered. Static crackled. They lied, we didn't all die, they took us. Blackwatch took us. Emma's blood ran cold. Where are you? Alsadger compound, underground, no comms out, they. The line cut to silence. Emma stared at the speaker, her pulse pounding. For the first time in years, she felt something close to hope, raw, dangerous hope. The door opened suddenly. Gray stood there, face pale. They're moving you. Cole wants you transferred off base before dawn. Emma stood slowly. Transferred where? He hesitated. He didn't say. Her eyes locked onto his. Then you already know. He looked down. I can't stop this. You could choose to help me instead. He hesitated. You have proof. Not yet, she said, but I have a name, Alsadger. That made him look up sharply. That's a restricted sector. Then that's where my team is. He swallowed hard. If you're right. I am, she said simply. He exhaled, torn between duty and conscience. I can stall the transfer, 2 hours maybe. After that I can't protect you. She nodded, that's enough. Gray studied her one last time. You know what this means, Rays, if you run. I'm not running. He gave a faint, almost resigned nod. Then may God help you. When he left, Emma moved fast. She dismantled the cot, stripped the wiring, pulled a bolt from the chair leg, tools, improvised, quiet. Every action done with the focus of someone who had rebuilt weapons under fire. 30 minutes later, the lock clicked. The door swung open into the cold night. The storm had passed, leaving only silence and stars. She slipped through the shadows, moving with the same grace that had once made her a ghost, past the barracks, past the wire, toward the motor pool where engines whispered sleep. She found a single Jeep, half-fueled, half-forgotten, hot-wired it with 2 wires and a silent prayer. The headlights stayed off as it rolled into the open desert. Behind her, the base lights shrank into the distance until they were nothing but pinpricks against the horizon. Ahead the world was empty and waiting. Her voice broke the silence, soft, certain. I'm coming for you, Kim. The wind swallowed her words, carrying them east, toward Alsadger, toward truth, toward ghosts that had never really died. Because some wars don't start with gunfire. Some start the moment you decide you've had enough of being silent. How far would you go to see the truth, if it meant losing what little of yourself you had left? The desert swallowed the Jeep's sound long before dawn. Emma drove with headlights off, guided only by moonlight and memory, the kind of navigation no GPS could match. The sand stretched endless in every direction, a sea of silence under silver light. The wind howled faintly across the dunes, carrying whispers from 1,000 unmarked graves. Each gust sounded like her name. She glanced once in the rearview mirror, nothing but darkness. No pursuit yet. Either Gray's delay had worked, or Cole wanted her to believe it had. Her hands gripped the wheel tighter. Every mile closer to Alsager felt heavier, more inevitable. She checked the map she'd taken from the supply room before leaving, a faded grid of military sectors, coded zones redacted with black ink. But she didn't need coordinates. She remembered Alsager from before. A ghost facility, no official designation, no entry on logistics manifests, the kind of place that existed only to be denied. When her team was alive, they joked about it, the desert's mouth, Kim used to call it, swallows everything and burps up rumors. Now it was real. And if Kim's voice on that intercom was more than a dying echo, then somewhere inside that compound was proof of her survival, of Blackwatch, of everything they'd buried. The horizon shifted. A faint glint of metal, low structures, fence lines, buried domes beneath camouflage netting. Alsager. Emma cut the engine a kilometer out, coasted the Jeep into a dry wadi and covered it with sand. The rest she would walk. The air was freezing now. Desert nights always were. She moved with deliberate silence, each step sinking into soft earth. Her pack carried only essentials: water, medkit, sidearm, modified rifle, and the radio she'd rebuilt during the drive. The moon dipped low behind her, turning the world to gray shadows, perfect for ghosts. As she approached the outer perimeter, her pulse slowed, mind sharpening. 2 guards at the gate, standard night rotation, patterns too neat. She crouched, watching. One smoked, the other paced, timing predictable, the kind of rhythm soldiers develop when they think no one's watching. She waited until the smoker turned away, then moved 3 steps low, 1 pause, 3 more. Silent, smooth. When she reached the first barrier, she cut the wire with a short blade multi-tool. No noise, just breath and focus. The second fence was electrified, low current, enough to alarm sensors. But someone had been sloppy. A section near the far pole was grounded with sand buildup. She used her knife's handle to press it down, slipped through, and didn't breathe until she was past. Inside, the base opened like a scar across the desert. Prefab walls, storage hangars, satellite dishes turned skyward, but most of it was underground, the real facility hidden beneath the dunes. She moved along the shadows, scanning with the faint red beam of her light. Each structure was labeled with cryptic letters: A12, R7, S3. No indication what they meant. Then a sound. Footsteps. Emma ducked behind a generator stack as 2 soldiers passed, their conversation half murmured. Transfer complete, Subject 9 still unstable. Cole says she's too valuable to lose again. Emma froze, Subject 9. When they disappeared into the tunnel entrance, she followed, keeping low, hugging the walls. The tunnel descended steeply, carved through concrete and time. The air grew cooler, heavier with the metallic tang of machines. She reached the lower level and stopped. Ahead, a massive corridor stretched out, lined with glass panels. Inside each, cells. Not prison cells, medical chambers. Monitors glowed dimly, displaying vitals, brain scans, neurochemical data. In the faint light, figures lay motionless on tables, restrained, monitored, alive. Her heart slammed once against her ribs. One of them moved. Emma pressed closer to the glass. The woman's face was pale, bruised, but familiar. "Kim," she whispered. The woman stirred weakly, eyes flickering open. When she saw Emma through the glass, her lips parted in disbelief. "Emma." The sound of her name hit harder than any bullet. Emma searched the console beside the chamber. Locked, biometric access only. She pulled her knife, pried the panel open and crossed 2 wires. The glass hissed open with a seal-breaking sigh. Kim gasped as the air rushed in. Emma caught her before she fell. "Easy," she said. "I've got you." Kim's voice trembled. "They said you were dead." "So did they about you." Kim's laugh was faint, broken. "I almost was." Emma glanced around. "Who else is here?" Kim's expression changed, fear replacing relief. "Not just us. The others, they're not the same anymore." "What do you mean?" Kim gripped her arm weakly. "They experimented, Emma. Blackwatch turned us into projects, neural conditioning. They said we were too effective to waste, so they rewired us." Emma felt her blood go cold. "You mean?" "Human augmentation," Kim whispered. "But it didn't stop there. They wanted obedience." A sound echoed down the corridor, metal boots on concrete. Emma drew her sidearm instantly. "Stay low." Kim grabbed her wrist. "No, wait." Too late. 3 soldiers rounded the corner, armored, black visors, silent. Not base guards, operatives. Emma fired first. One dropped instantly. The second ducked, returning fire with surgical precision. Bullets screamed off the walls, sparks raining down. Emma rolled, grabbed the fallen guard's weapon, fired 2 quick shots, center mass. Clean, efficient. The last one hesitated, not from fear but confusion. His rifle trembled slightly, as if fighting unseen orders. Emma sighted him, then stopped. Something was wrong. His visor had cracked in the fight, revealing half his face. She recognized it. "Martinez," she whispered. He froze. Recognition flickered in his eyes. "Emma." Her world tilted. Martinez, her teammate, her dead teammate. Before she could move, his head jerked violently, and then he dropped, lifeless. A faint electric burn marked his temple. Remote termination. Emma stared at him, breath ragged. They controlled him. Kim's voice broke. "I told you they're not human anymore." Emma clenched her jaw, rage and horror twisting inside her. "Then we end it." She helped Kim stand, half dragging her toward the exit. But alarms began to wail, red lights bathing the corridor in blood-colored glow. "Containment breach," a voice boomed over the intercom. "Level 3 lockdown engaged." Doors began slamming shut one by one, heavy and final. Emma sprinted, half carrying Kim, ducking beneath closing gates, sliding under the last one just as it sealed behind them. They stumbled into a control room, walls lined with screens, all displaying live feeds from across the facility. Kim pointed weakly. "Central drive, left side." Emma moved to the console, typing fast, hands steady. "If we can copy this, we expose everything." The data streamed faster than her eyes could follow, project names, personnel logs, funding trails. Then she saw it. Operation Chimera. Status active. Objective: retain control of Blackwatch assets through neuro-override protocol. Her stomach twisted. They hadn't just erased soldiers, they'd rewritten them. Kim watched the monitor, tears cutting through grime on her face. "We were weapons, Emma, that's all." Emma reached over, touched her shoulder. "Not anymore." She pulled a hard drive from her pocket, old, military grade, plugged it in. Download sequence initiated. Progress bar, 23%, 39%, 62%. Footsteps again, fast, close. Emma took cover behind the console, rifle ready. 2 more guards entered, real ones this time, not controlled. They didn't see her at first. She waited until they passed, then stepped out and fired once, twice. Precision, silence again. The screen beeped, transfer complete. Emma yanked the drive, shoved it into her vest. "Got it." Kim looked toward the door. "We can't go back the way you came." "Then we find another way." They ran through the lower tunnels, alarms still screaming, lights flickering. The smell of smoke and ozone filled the air. At the far end of the corridor, Emma saw it, a freight lift, locked but functional. She slammed the controls. Override. Kim tapped weakly at the side panel. Sparks jumped, the door hissed open, and they stepped inside. As the lift began rising, Kim leaned against the wall, eyes half closed. "They'll come for us." "They already have," Emma said quietly. "Now we go for them." When the doors opened, dawn had just begun bleeding across the horizon. The desert glowed faintly gold through the blast doors. Emma took one last look back into the compound, at the smoke, the alarms, the ghosts they'd left behind. Then she turned to Kim. "We're not done yet." Kim managed a faint smile. "You never are." They slipped into the light and vanished into the desert. Far behind them, inside the smoke-filled corridors, a single monitor flickered back to life. On it, Director Cole appeared, face calm, eyes cold. He watched the empty hallway for a moment, then smiled slightly. "Let her run," he said softly. "She'll lead us to the others." He turned to the screen beside him, a row of recovered profiles. Raise Emma status, rogue. Chimera assets, tracking. And in a secure server deep beneath Al-Sajir, Martinez's body twitched once, then opened its eyes. Because ghosts, it seemed, could be reprogrammed too. How do you fight something that remembers being you? The desert stretched endless under a red sunrise. Emma and Kim moved through it like shadows with nowhere left to hide. The wind scraped their faces raw, pushing dust into every wound and seam. They'd been walking for hours. The adrenaline was gone. All that remained was pain and purpose. Emma led, rifle slung tight across her chest, eyes scanning the horizon in a soldier's rhythm. Scan, blink, breathe, scan again. Every movement spoke of training carved into muscle. But inside she was unraveling, one silent thread at a time. Kim limped behind, exhaustion carved into her every step. Her uniform was half torn, her lips cracked from dehydration, yet she didn't complain. Neither of them spoke for miles. Words were luxuries for people who weren't being hunted. Finally, Kim broke the silence. Her voice was hoarse but steady. "You always did pick the worst places to come back to life." Emma gave a dry smile. "Guess I never learned subtle." "You were never subtle." They shared a brief, fragile laugh, the kind born more from memory than joy. But the laughter died fast. A sound echoed behind them, faint, mechanical, too regular to be wind. Emma froze. "Drones." Kim turned, squinting against the glare. 3 dots shimmered in the sky, closing fast, their engines like insect wings. "Run," Emma ordered. They sprinted toward the nearest ridge, a jagged slope of rock half buried in sand. Bullets hissed past them like angry whispers. Emma dove behind a boulder, dragging Kim down beside her. The drones adjusted altitude, circling like vultures. Emma drew her sidearm, exhaled once, and fired. One drone spiraled down in smoke. The other 2 split wide, evasive, calculating. "They're guiding someone," Kim gasped. "Ground units." Emma's stomach tightened. She reloaded calmly. "Then we move before they land." They descended the far side of the ridge, sliding on loose rock. The air shimmered with heat, the light turning everything to gold and pain. Kim stumbled halfway down. Emma caught her, steadying her with a firm grip. "We can rest when we're dead," she said softly. Encouraging as always, Kim muttered, trying to smile. They reached the base of the ridge and found what they hadn't expected, a dry riverbed, deep and narrow, cutting a path through the sand. Shelter. Direction. Emma dropped to one knee, scanning again. Nothing yet, but they'd come. They always came. Kim sat on the edge, clutching her side. "You really think we can outrun Blackwatch?" Emma didn't look at her. "We don't outrun them, we expose them." Kim frowned. "And what then? You think the world cares about ghosts like us?" Emma finally turned, eyes fierce. "They will when they see what those ghosts became." The silence after that wasn't agreement, just exhaustion. They followed the dry riverbed west, using its shadow to mask their movement. Emma checked the hard drive again, the single thing that might prove everything. The data inside could bring down men like Cole if they lived long enough to get it out. Hours passed, the sun climbed, the heat turned brutal, Kim's pace faltered. When she collapsed, Emma was beside her instantly. "Hey, stay with me." Kim's breathing came shallow. I can't keep up." Emma looked around. No cover, no water left, nothing but horizon. She knelt beside her, unstrapping her canteen. Empty, damn it. Kim smiled faintly. "Remember that mission in Kandahar? You said dying of thirst would be a boring way to go." Emma managed a tight smile. "Still is." "Guess we should have wished for boring." Emma's eyes softened. "No, not you, you're getting out." Kim shook her head. "You always were bad at math, Rays. You can't carry me and run from drones." Emma's jaw tightened. "I'm not leaving you again." Kim gripped her wrist. "You already did once, that's enough." Before Emma could answer, the faint whine of engines returned, closer now. "Down," she hissed, dragging Kim beneath a collapsed section of the riverbank. The shadow swallowed them whole. The drones hovered overhead, scanning beams cutting through dust. Then they drifted past, moving east. Emma waited until they were gone before exhaling. Kim leaned her head back against the dirt wall. "You still pray?" Emma blinked. "Not since Ramadi." "You should start again." Emma looked at her. "Why?" Kim smiled weakly. "Because you're gonna need help to finish this." She coughed and Emma saw the blood. Dark, thin, internal bleeding. "No," Emma said, voice trembling now. "No, no, no." Kim caught her hand. "It's okay." "It's not okay." "Then make it mean something," Kim whispered. Emma's throat closed. She wanted to scream, to tear the desert apart with her bare hands. But all she could do was hold on as Kim's grip weakened. "I was supposed to die in that building," Kim said softly. "You gave me extra time. Use it." Emma shook her head. "I need you." Kim smiled one last time. "Then remember me right." And then silence. The desert swallowed her last breath. Emma sat there for a long time, motionless. The sun crawled higher, painting the world in cruel brightness. Finally, she laid Kim down gently, crossed her hands over her chest, and whispered something no one else would ever hear. Then she stood, face blank, eyes burning. When she picked up her rifle again, it wasn't about survival anymore. It was war. She moved west, toward the faint shimmer of smoke on the horizon, a sign of life or death or both. By the time the sun fell, she'd found it. A convoy blackwatch. 3 armored vehicles parked in a semicircle near an outpost, men in black uniforms moving with mechanical precision. And among them, a familiar face. Martinez. Alive, or something that used to be him. His movements were wrong, too smooth, too calculated. His eyes, when they caught the light, reflected silver. Emma's breath hitched. "They brought you back." She raised her rifle, but hesitated. He was still Martinez, somewhere in there, somewhere under the programming. She whispered, "I'm sorry." Then fired. The shot struck clean shoulder, not fatal. Martinez fell back, shouting in mechanical confusion. The camp erupted. Emma rolled behind a dune, reloading, counting angles. 3 shooters, 1 sniper. She moved like a shadow, silent and fast. 1 down, 2 down. Then Martinez's voice cut through the chaos. "Emma, stop." She froze. He stepped into view, bleeding but standing. His rifle hung loose, his expression torn between orders and memory. "They'll kill you," he said, voice glitching, half metallic. "I've been dead before." He took a step closer. "You don't understand. They rewired me, Emma. I can feel their commands in my head. Every time I try to resist, it hurts." Her eyes softened. "Then fight anyway." I can't. Yes, you can. He shook his head violently. You don't get it. If I disobey, they'll kill the others, the ones they're still using. Kim's dead, she said quietly. He froze, his jaw clenched, eyes flickering with pain. They killed her long before you did, Emma continued. You think obeying them saves anyone. It just delays the next grave. Martinez's rifle trembled. I don't know who I am anymore. You're still my team, she whispered. That's enough. For a heartbeat, something human flickered in his eyes. Then his head jerked violently, and his expression went blank. A voice echoed from the comm in his helmet, Cole's voice. Stand down, Sergeant Reyes. This is over. Emma raised her weapon. You're right, it is. She fired again, clean shot, through the comm unit. Sparks burst and Martinez crumpled silently. The remaining guards retreated, dragging their wounded. When the dust settled, Emma stood alone among the wreckage, breathing hard, shaking from exhaustion and grief. The sun dipped behind the dunes, and the desert cooled. She looked down at Martinez's body. His eyes were still open, but now they looked human again. She whispered, "Rest now." Then she took his dog tags and tucked them into her pocket beside Kim's. 2 ghosts down. As she turned to leave, a faint beeping caught her attention, a comm device half buried in sand. She lifted it carefully, pressed the side button. Static, then Cole's voice, calm, collected, venom wrapped in silk. You can't save them, Emma. They're gone, all of them. What you're doing, it's sentimentality, and sentiment gets soldiers killed. She didn't reply, just listened. He continued, but I admire your persistence. Truly, every good weapon needs a test. You've just proven the Chimera program works. Her jaw clenched. You think this is about proving you right? He chuckled. No, it's about seeing how far you'll go before you realize resistance is just another form of obedience. The comm crackled out. Emma stared at it for a long time, then crushed it in her hand. Her voice was low, steady, unshaken. You're wrong, Cole. Obedience dies when the right person stops following. She turned her gaze west, where the stars began to rise. Behind her, the desert lay littered with broken machinery, and the bodies of soldiers who'd forgotten how to be human. Ahead, the horizon waited silent, endless, unforgiving. She whispered to the wind, you wanted a ghost, you got one. And she kept walking, alone, into the night, toward the heart of the storm she'd promised to end. Because sometimes, the only way to bring peace is to become the thing they fear most. A ghost that remembers what it means to be alive. What do you do when the war follows you home? The desert was silent when she stopped walking. Hours or maybe days had passed since the last firefight. Her clothes were torn, her water gone, her voice cracked from dust and silence. But her eyes were still sharp. Ahead, under the bruised sky, a structure rose from the sand like something buried trying to crawl back up. Concrete, steel, antennas broken by wind. A command site. Emma approached slowly, her boots leaving shallow prints across the hard-packed earth. Every step hurt, every breath burned. But pain was familiar now, an old comrade that reminded her she was still alive. When she reached the door, it opened without sound. No guards, no alarms, just emptiness waiting to be filled. Inside, the corridors were too clean, too quiet. Every surface gleamed with the kind of order only fear maintained. She followed the hum of machines, the faint rhythm of life below the surface. The facility wasn't large. It didn't need to be. Evil didn't require space, just precision. She descended the stairs until she reached a wide, circular chamber filled with screens. And there he was, Director Cole, standing in the center, hands clasped behind his back, staring at a live feed of her walking through the desert minutes ago. Impressive, he said without turning. You made good time. Emma's rifle hung loose at her side. You always did like watching. He smiled faintly, finally turning toward her. Observation keeps the world from falling apart. Someone has to hold the line. By killing the people who built it. His tone didn't change. By controlling them. She stepped closer. You turned my team into machines. I perfected them. Her jaw tightened. You murdered them. He gestured toward one of the screens. It flickered to life, showing Kim, Martinez, Ramirez, each one in a medical bay, still, cold. They volunteered, he said calmly. They believed in something bigger than themselves. They believed in each other, Emma shot back, and you used that against them. Cole's voice stayed quiet. You talk about loyalty as if it's weakness, but loyalty without control breeds chaos. Ramadi proved that. You went off script. You made your own choices. 7 people died because of it. Her breath caught. The words hit old wounds. You think I wanted that, she whispered. I think you caused it, he said softly. And deep down, you know I'm right. That's why you hid. Why you let the world believe you were broken. She took one step forward, eyes burning. I hid because I buried 7 people with my own hands and still heard them screaming every night after. You don't get to define that. He studied her expression, unreadable. You want absolution, Sergeant Reyes. It doesn't exist, but I can offer purpose. Join me. Lead the new generation of Chimera assets. No more guilt, no more ghosts, just results. For a long moment, the world seemed to stop. The hum of machines faded. The light flickered across her face, half shadow, half flame. Then she laughed, low, bitter, human. You still don't understand, do you? He tilted his head. Enlighten me. She raised the hard drive she'd taken from Al-Sajir. I already ended you hours ago. Data's transmitted. Every file, every experiment, every body. It's gone public. For the first time his calm cracked, his eyes narrowed. Impossible, you were alone. I was. He froze. From the far end of the chamber, another figure stepped out of the shadows, Lieutenant Gray. His face was grim, his uniform stained with dust. He spoke quietly. The transmission hit NATO servers 20 minutes ago. Every major outlet has it by now. Blackwatch is finished. Cole turned on him, fury igniting. You don't know what you've done. Gray's voice didn't waver. I finally did my job. Cole moved for the console, but Emma raised her rifle, steady, precise. Don't, she said. He stopped. For the first time, something like fear flickered in his eyes. You think they'll thank you for this, he hissed. You think they'll believe you. You're a ghost, Emma, a weapon that went rogue. They'll hunt you just like they hunted me. Maybe, she said softly, but at least I'll know who I am when they do. His hand twitched, reaching for the holster at his hip. Her rifle barked once. The bullet tore through the air with surgical clarity. Cole staggered back, shock on his face. He looked down at the wound, blood blooming across his pristine uniform. You could have been perfect, he whispered. She stepped closer. No, I could have been human. He collapsed against the console. The screens flickered once, then died. For a long time, there was only the sound of his breathing, slowing, fatting, gone. Emma lowered her rifle. Gray stood still, staring at the body. What now? She looked around the chamber, the cold light, the dead machines, the echoes of ghosts. Now it's over. But even as she said it, she knew it was. Not really. She holstered her weapon and turned toward the stairs. You should leave, Lieutenant. When they come for me, don't be here. He followed her gaze. They'll come for both of us. She almost smiled. Then I hope they send someone better than him. They walked together through the upper levels. The alarm still silent, the base empty, the dawn starting to bleed through the vents. When they reached the exit, Gray stopped. You're really not coming back, are you? Emma shook her head. You can't go back to something that was never home. He hesitated. You could tell your story, people would listen. She looked out over the horizon, the same desert that had tried to bury her 100 times and failed. Stories aren't for me anymore. They're for the ones who need to believe something worth dying for still exists. She handed him the dog tags she'd carried, Kim's, Martinez's, her own. Take these, she said. Make sure they're remembered right. He took them slowly. What about you? She smiled, faint, tired, real. I was never the hero in this story, Lieutenant. Just the reminder that heroes are human too. Then she stepped out into the sunlight. The wind caught her hair, the heat rising like a memory of fire. Behind her, the facility smoldered, dust and smoke twisting upward into the sky like a ghost finally let go. Gray watched her go until she disappeared into the shimmer, a figure small against the infinite horizon. He whispered to himself, "Godspeed, Phantom." She walked until she couldn't feel her legs anymore. Then she dropped to one knee and looked up at the endless blue above. No gunfire, no commands, just the sound of wind, free and alive. She thought of Kim, of Martinez, of every soldier who'd been erased by the lie of control. She thought of the men who doubted her, the voices that told her she was broken, replaceable, unworthy. And she thought of one truth that had survived everything. Humanity, real, flawed, stubborn humanity, couldn't be programmed. It could break. It could bleed. But it could never be rewritten. She pulled the last photo from her pocket, creased, sun-faded, edges burned. Her team years ago, all smiles, all alive. She traced each face with her thumb, whispering their names like a prayer. Then she tore the photo in half, not from anger but release. The wind carried the pieces away, scattering them across the dunes. She looked at the horizon one last time. Her voice was almost a whisper now, barely audible above the wind. They tried to make me a weapon, but I was always something else. She slung her rifle across her back and started walking again, her silhouette shrinking against the endless gold of the desert. Somewhere behind her, the world was changing. Headlines, investigations, disbelief turning into truth. Somewhere ahead, a future waited, uncertain, undesigned, unowned. For the first time in years, she wasn't running from ghosts. She was walking with them. And in that silence between wind and light and memory, the narrator's voice would fade in calm, quiet, final. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak, it simply acts. And sometimes, the loudest revolution begins with one soldier who refused to stay silent. The desert wind rose once more, carrying her name into legend. Not phantom, not subject, not asset. Just Emma Reyes. Human. Free. Unforgettable.